Okay, hello friends, welcome back. Speedball Mike Bailey here with another Patreon video about professional wrestling, mostly for professional wrestlers, but also anyone else who would like to watch. If you come across this video through the Patreon, thank you so much for being a patron. If you have it sent to you, if I sent it to you, if someone else sent it to you, thank you for watching, first of all, but also, if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, opinion about this video, or any of the other videos that I've made, please let me know. That's all I ask in return. You most likely, if you're not watching this through Patreon, you haven't paid for these. So all I ask in return is that this be a conversation, because this is the only way that teaching pro wrestling really works. Me just talking at you kind of really doesn't work. There are follow-up questions usually. There always are, and especially with this video, which is my attempt to cover an extremely broad topic of tag team wrestling. In fact, as I made the script for this, I was writing down my notes and things I wanted to talk about. I started to realize that there was no way that I could cover everything I wanted to and have this video be less than like 3 hours. There's a lot more. There's a lot that's missing from this video. And so I might make some kind of follow-up. What I'm hoping will happen is that I'm going to introduce a bunch of concepts and start talking about a bunch of things in this video. And then there will be questions, there will be follow-up, there will be more that I realize I didn't do. And hopefully you guys let me know what that is specifically, and I can make another video going back to it, right? But the topic for today is tag team wrestling. Mostly structure. We're gonna do an overview about a lot of things. Positioning is always key for these matches. Positioning is super difficult, super important, and can make or break a lot of scenarios in tag team wrestling. And that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit today. But it could easily be its own very long video, right? So if you haven't yet, attached in the description of this are all the other videos. Watch the structure video, because there's a lot of terminology that I have made up. I use a lot of terminology that is, used in pro wrestling, but there's a lot that I have made up because I had to, because there aren't words for this kind of stuff. But it's in the structure video, so if you haven't watched that, watch that as well. And tied to the structure video is the progression video, right? The notion of progression, very easy to understand with moves. A guy gets on the top rope, does a 630. Then later in the match, same context, the guy gets up on the top rope, does a frog splash. 1-2 kick out. Right? A frog splash, it's a fine move, but compared to the 630, becomes overwhelming. Well, that applies to everything in pro wrestling. This applies to, the total size of the spot, the total size of the part of the structure that you're having to do. This becomes especially relevant when it comes to tag team wrestling, where we have a third dimension to progression, which I'll talk about in a second. But before we move on, okay, so I am not, by definition, people don't think of Speedball Mike Bailey as a tag team wrestler, right? I've done way more singles matches than I have done tag team matches. However, that being said, I was part of many very successful tag teams. Me and Takeshita were DDT Tag Champions. Moonlight Express with Mao. I've teamed with Veda 500,000 times. Me and Jake Something, most recently in DPW. Speedball Mountain, and many, many more, right? And all of these, or most of these tag teams, I'm sure that it did. Me and Takeshita, me and Mao, me and Jake for sure, all started because we were thrown together in a random tag match. And we made it work exceptionally well. The dynamics worked well, the moves that we made up for this match worked well, and so the matches were good. Specifically, me and Mao was in some kind of 4-way tag match at Sumo Hall. We did the buddy salt, where we both stand on the same turnbuckle and do a moonsault to the outside, kind of like double Spanish fly style. And the president of DDT was like, "That was awesome, you guys are a tag team now." But that's kind of a big thing that I want to talk about in this video, is that there's a misconception. There's a lot of misconceptions that I want to address, but one of them is that you need to be a tag team to have a good tag team match, which I don't think is true at all. I think you can make anything work if you go about it, again, the right way. There's a lot of mistakes, but so okay, misconceptions and mistakes. The biggest mistake that I want to talk about is this, and this is very like old school, straight down the middle. I can think of one particularly awful YouTube video that I will not name because I don't want you guys to go and seek it out. If you want to message me and ask what it is, I'll send it to you, but it's especially bad. But the person who is giving terrible advice in this video talks about how the tag is the gimmick, right? And that's it. It's all about the tag. And it is, but it's a lot more complex than that. That's kind of like saying that in a singles match, the gimmick is all about the pin. It's all about the pinfall. That's what pro wrestling is, which is not true. It's a lot more complex than that. And I'll be more specific on that in a second, but first we have to talk about, like, back to structure, right? What is the goal of structure? Why do you structure your pro wrestling matches? When I talk about structure, I always imply time, right? Structure being how you divide your time in a pro wrestling match. And the goal, again, measure, replicate, and understand. And now, we have even more people. It's not just like if I know the structure will be fine and then I can take my opponent through. This is 4 people that need to be on the same page with the structure. Because again, measure. When I say measure, I mean like we know we're doing a shine. This is a shine. And a shine implies a certain volume, implies a certain length, implies a certain type of behavior, certain type of body language. It's the shine, so we're not dead yet, right? Things like that. Everyone needs to be on the same page, usually at least the 4 of you, to replicate. If a device within your structure worked well, was successful, then you should seek to do it again. Especially when it comes to Western independent professional wrestling, which is mostly what I'm covering. Though again, as I spend time on television, I find this stuff to be more and more true. So the replicate part, super important for tag team wrestling, because there's a lot more room in terms of the structure. There's a lot more devices that work. And again, understand, right? If something worked, if a move worked, why did the move work? Well, it's because I put it in this spot trying to accomplish this, right? So that's basically just quick overview on why we structure pro wrestling matches and why that's so important, right? And the other goal, right? Knowing all this, structure is only referential. And when I say referential, right, reference, it's for you. This is the goal. I'm going to give you, later in this video, a bunch of structural options and rules that govern structure, but there is an infinity of valid structures. And what kind of dictates your structure? Things like context, right? If you're doing a 6-man tag in Mexico, that comes with a certain structure, and a lot of the rules that will apply on American independent wrestling might not be as important or might not apply as well, right? Of course, match time. The time you have to do the match is probably the biggest governing factor when it comes to your structure. How long do you have to plan, right? That's another very big thing. If I have 5 minutes to put this match together, then the structure might not be that complex. And it's important to keep these things in mind when you start to make matches, right? Ideas. Do I have an idea for a specific device? Ideas sort of in time to plan are kind of together. The more ideas I have, the more things I know in advance that I want to do, especially if it's based on, oh, I watched you guys' tags matches. I know you usually use this here, so I was thinking we would, and then planning becomes a lot easier, which can impact planning time, which needs to be factored into match time, which again, it affects your structure, right? But in tag matches, beyond all the normal rules that we have that I explained in the structure video, usually, not always, but mostly, the structure follows the tag, if that makes sense. Every time you go from one part of your structure to the next, you have a transition like this, either there is a tag, or there isn't, and that's kind of noteworthy, if that makes sense. Usually, if you're gonna do a tag and it isn't like part of a spot, it's a lot easier to kind of tag out and change who's legal when you're switching from one part of the structure to the next. More on that later. Again, from the structure video, front end, back end theory still applies, right? Not, again, I want to be very clear about this because I've had a couple people be confused by this. This is not front half, back half. The way I define front end is the beginning, usually up to like the comeback, right? But the part that is used to really establish everything in the match, and the back end is when we'll have potential falsies. When we've wrestled enough that everything is established, the dynamic is clear, the story is understood by the audience, and now we can start playing into the dramatics and the excitement that comes along with finishes and potential false finishes, right? And it's not front half, back half, because usually the front half will be a lot shorter, or should be. Again, that depends on the length of your match. If your match is 8 minutes long, then yeah, it might be 4 minutes. But if your match is 20 minutes long, that doesn't mean you should do a 10-minute front half, sorry. In fact, we should try to maximize our time on the back half by compressing everything on the front end and making everything as efficient as possible. That's a whole other structure video. That's 45 minutes, right? So, more on the front end, back end, and front half, back half. This is what I want to talk about, and this is probably the biggest mistake that I see in tag team wrestling. And this is again the kind of stuff that I say that makes old school people very mad because they've worked with one specific structure for a long time. And I'm telling you to not do this structure, but I have my reasons, and I know my reasons to be true. I believe in them strongly. But the hot tag fallacy, right? When I talk about the hot tag fallacy, is there is one hot tag, and that's what the match is all about. And here's what happens in these matches. I see this in a lot of bad 6-man tags in America. I see this happen a lot. Our match is going to be 18 minutes long, right? And then we're going to do a beginning that's like 3 minutes. We're going to do a heat that is 5 minutes long because we're going to do a bunch of false tags, and we're really going to build to that hot tag. And as a result, the reaction of the hot tag is going to be huge. And the hot tag is going to be big. It's going to be the biggest guy in the match, taking out every single heel. And we've been building up to it for so long that it gets the biggest reaction in the match by far, right? But the problem is we have to wrestle another 10 minutes after that, and we never quite make it back. That's the thing that I see happen very often in tag matches and 6-man tags. And a lot, again, this is about progression. Progression still applies. Back to the progression video, how to build falsies as well as falsies versus near falls. If you want a near fall or a falsie to get the biggest reaction possible, then it should be the biggest point in the match so far, right? So if your hot tag is one guy who does fucking strike to everyone, move on top of a guy, throws the guy in, throws the guy outside, dives on everyone, throws the guy in, move off the top rope, move to 2 people, big move, 1-2 kick out. And then your next falsie is I try a move, you counter, you hit a move, 1-2 kick out, right? Inverse progression doesn't work. So while you should still have a good hot tag, you should have a good comeback video precedes this, kind of talks about this a lot, as well as talks about it in tag team matches. But your falsies should still be bigger than your comebacks, right? The cornerstone of progression is that every spot, every part of your structure should be weighed against the previous part. So if your comeback is gigantic and it's a 10, then what do you do for your false? You know what I mean? That doesn't mean you can't and shouldn't have a hot tag. That doesn't mean this doesn't apply later in the match, but you can still do, a heat to a big comeback, and then later build up to the last tag that'll lead to a falsie. But those are different things. Okay, now this is the other big mistake that I see, things that people do wrong, is they think it's a tag match, so everything must be a team combination, a team move. So, and then this is what you have to remember, right? If you're watching this video and you're only going to remember one thing, is that tag moves all look the same to casual wrestling fans. And this is, again, very realistic thing that I've seen happen in many matches, right? So our cutoff is going to be wheelbarrow DDT. And then for our first Fallacy, we'll hit back suplex neck breaker. And then the finish of the match is powerbomb backcracker. Now, what do all of those moves have in common? It's one guy lifts a guy and the other guy jumps and grabs him. There's like no difference in the move itself to the audience that's watching the match and not like breaking it down or paying super close attention, right? So you still have to progress. You have to build up to the actual tag moves. Again, of course, it's not all about the moves themselves, but more so how they're teased and how they're brought about and the spot that builds up to them, of course. But also, if everything is a tag move and everything is an equal sized and equally built tag move, tag combination, tag strike combo, then it all ends up being meaningless, and you're gonna get inverse progression quite rapidly. And that's a very realistic mistake that I see very often. When I talk about progression in tag team wrestling being three-dimensional, right? I mean that you have like the pacing, the tempo, and the speed, but also the amount of people involved in the spot. Which you have to keep in mind that the more people are involved within one spot, the more difficult it's going to be to plan, the more memory points it's going to heat up, and also the more difficult it's going to be, the bigger it's going to seem to the audience, right? So you kind of have to use that when you're weighing your progression, how many people are involved. When it comes to structure, again, important principle that applies especially to Western independent professional wrestling, which I used to say the wrestling that happens in America, in Europe, in Australia. Shows happen once a month, but singles matches have the most researched, conventional, and familiar structure. And I think tag matches need to mirror that as well. I think especially for the front end, beginning, shine, cutoff, heat, comeback, presenting that to an audience, it tends to be fairly well understood, as well as conventional. When I talk about conventional, right, every wrestler in Western independent professional wrestling kind of knows that rhythm, knows that timing, so you don't have to explain it, which again goes into your planning time, but it's fairly well understood. And this applies to tag matches as well. I think the front end, which we're going to talk about again, is kind of the same as a singles match. And that's, I think, the best you can do. This especially applies to six-man tags, and especially the beginning of six-man tags, where I've seen a lot. And this is, again, real life mistakes that if you start paying attention, you will see them happen on shows. But we've all seen the 5-on-5 main event match, right? And this is something that I referred to in the structure video. But minimum effective dose, right? If the goal of a beginning is to let the audience understand the dynamics, right? Of course, you can stay in your beginning forever if you want to eat up time. But if you do that, the negative consequence is that you're eating up time you could use on the back end, where your match is going to, again, be exciting and dramatic. And the more time you're able, of course, skill is a limiting factor, but the more time you're able to spend in the back end, the better your match needs to be, right? And there shouldn't be a need to repeat. This is something that I hold as self-evident. But the way the audience feels about one member of a team is kind of how they will feel about the team. By which I mean, if one member shines, if one member is shown to be disloyal and a cheater, unless the partner, let's say our beginning, I'm a dirty, sneaky bastard, and that's my gimmick. That's what I want to show the audience. So I start the match by getting out-wrestled by the babyface, and then I pull his hair, bump him, and stomp him on the face. Then the ref backs me up, And I'm like, hey, unless my partner is like, hey, why did you do that? I didn't know we were cheating. If your partner goes, ha ha, hell yeah, you got him, then the audience is going to feel the way they feel about me, who just cheated to get up on the babyface, about both of us, right? Sounds simple when I explain it this way, but it applies in a bunch of different ways. What I'm trying to say, I'm taking a long road to say that this is bad for a structure. Shine, shine, shine for a 6-man tag, let's say. Or again, it happens in a tag match too. It's my shine, your shine, then my second shine, right? You're just repeating steps. In theory, if your shine is good, and of course it's always a limited, skill is always a limiting factor. But if your shine is good and you're able to do it and make your team look good, get your team excited about you as a babyface, then you shouldn't need to do it again. You should be able to move on, which again compresses the front end, which again gives you more time in the part of your match that's actually going to be exciting and memorable, right? So for, again, how do we start a normal singles match as a structure video? What I recommend, and I think is most conventional, most effective, most easy, beginning shine cutoff, which I think if you're going to do, 3 pairs or 3 layers to your beginning, because it's a 6-man tag and you want to involve everyone, which is usually a good thing to do, right? Balance. The notion of balance, pretty important. I'm going to talk about balance a bit later. But beginning shine cutoff, right? Then we can do this rather quickly, and we're already at the heat, right? Because if we do this, we have repetition. So beginning means that the first pair that happens, they just establish the dynamics. I'm not going to go do tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, drop kick, and then tag my partner and have them do tackle or whatever. Have them do up and over, arm drag, hip toss, middle kick, or something similar, right? Beginning, let's say it's chain wrestling. Chain wrestling, I show, hey, we're good guys. Whoa, I out wrestle my guy. Hell yeah. Oh, hair pulled, face stomp. Ah, boo their heels. Right? Then we're not going to do that again. That's okay. Audience understands. Dynamics. These guys are the good guys. This guy out wrestled his partner and the other one got mad and everyone was on the same page. Then we can move on. Then we can move on to the same page. The second guy comes in and he's like, oh, I'm not going to let this happen again. Instead, I'm going to do, action. And then once the team as a collective has shined and have gotten us over, we had a beginning that established the dynamics for the team. We had a shine that established that everyone, that built expectations for everyone on the team does cool things. And then the third guy comes in, hey, I'm going to do some more cool things, gets cut off, right? That's a very efficient way to get through all these steps. And I think that repeating them is a mistake, because I have seen 20-minute 4-on-4 matches that start with shine, 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 shine. And by the third shine, the audience is kind of sick of seeing them. So you have to stop, rebuild, stop, rebuild, stop, rebuild every time, when you could really just get through this in 2 minutes at most, right? And then along those same lines, one heat is always better than 2 heats. God, do I dislike 2 heats. Never want 2 heats. Again, heats in general are longer than they should be. The goal of the heat, in my opinion, is to give the audience as well as the wrestlers a break, let them understand the dynamics, and build up to a comeback, right? Build up to what's going to take us to the back end of the match, where it really becomes dramatic. We're going to have a slowdown, then it's going to pick back up. And in order for things to pick back up properly, we need to create that need for the audience to want more action, right? When this team is in control, it's boring. So I'm restless. So I start cheering because I want something to happen. And I think people feel the need for 2 heats because they imply binary pacing, by which I mean there's stop and there's go. But if you're able to build false finishes properly and have more complex pacing on the back end than just 2 speeds, meaning that you actually build your false finishes with, ideally, back to the structure video, back to the progression video, an active break, and then the high spot that takes us to the finish, and isn't just stop and go, right? This is also the hot tag fallacy, again, that why people use 2 heats in a tag match because, well, if one hot tag is great, then 2 hot tags is better. But again, they don't take progression into account when they do that. The one caveat to this is commercial breaks, which you probably, if you're watching this video, probably don't have to deal with. But if you do, then yes, 2 heats might be something that you have to do. Right? Then talking about heats, this is when I want to talk about false tags. Now, you guys know how I feel about hope spots. I don't like them. I think they're a great way to control time. I think they're a handy tool when it comes to that. But I tend to believe that in general, you either burn out the audience by doing too much of a comeback, or you don't. You actually do a proper hope spot where you don't actually make your comeback. You just get closer, but then that takes up a lot of memory points. And I feel the same way about false tags during the heat. And I'm specific about during the heat because I think false tags are fantastic. But this is the problem. This is the paradox, right? If they're important, if you want to do false tags and they're important, then you wouldn't do them during the heat, because during the heat, your match is not dramatic. We're not late enough. We haven't completed the front end. It's not dramatic. We can't really have a false finish, so nothing means as much as it will after we've gotten past the point where everyone has taken enough damage and the audience understands the story of our match, right? So if they're important, don't do them during the heat. There's plenty of space in which to do false tags after the heat, right? And if they're not important, then they're just not worth doing. That doesn't mean, again, things can happen organically. Babyfaces taking heat should reach for their corner and be like, oh, I'm trying to tag. Or you can do the thing where it's like, I pick you up, double leg, and then you're over my shoulder, reaching, but then I ram you into a corner. Stuff like that is fine. My biggest issue with it is memory points. How much space in your brain you're using to build those hot tags that tend to be very difficult. As well as time, just straight up time when you're planning your match. I want you guys to plan in order of importance. More attention on the stuff that is more important, that has a bigger return. And typically, what you do in the heat tends to not be very high. Right? Now, we're still talking about front end here too, so I have to talk about the hot tag. Right? Which is, typical terminology for the comeback in a tag team match. Now, if you're going to go back to the comeback video, I like, you guys know how I like it. I like a down. Before, I like a down leading into it. Not a double down, again, because I don't think we're there. I also kind of don't want a double down with people standing on the apron, but much more on that later, right? But a hot tag, depending on the length of the match, again, if you want one hot tag, I separate hot tag from comeback in terms of like structural devices. When I talk about hot tag, it's like big one and then on both partner, right? I have different terminology, but kind of conventionally, especially in the US, in Western Independent Professional Wrestling, the comeback of a tag match implies double tag, one person on both heels. But I don't think that's necessary. I certainly think that's an option. Again, depending on time and structure, I think that's a fantastic option in a lot of cases. But there are a lot of options, right? The other option that might be new, that has more of a chance of being new, that I prefer, and we will talk about later, is a round of comebacks. If you just watched the video before this one, which was comeback theory, right? If everyone in the match has a good comeback and we're all able to kind of do it in one spot, and again, it doesn't count as repetition in my eyes, even though it appears to be, because everyone gets to do their comeback and it kind of builds into one and then will lead to like a double down. Not a four-way down, not everyone down, but a double down inside, right? I'll talk about that, but my favorite tag team device which is the one that is conventionally used in Japan, but is one person comeback, and then round of comebacks, and then double down, double touch. And because we had that double down, the damage is established because we had those comebacks. Again, if everyone has their comebacks, and it's a piece of our match that took no time to make because everyone knows the comeback and is going to be good because everyone is good at comebacks. And then we have the double down to signify that damage is equal. Anyone could win at this point, and then we're able to have falsies, right? And then talking about the back end of our tag team matches, how options and tips to structure that. As I talked about earlier, right? One hot tag, having one big hot tag, and then needing to keep the match going for many, many minutes has potential progression issues. Again, it might not. Depends how you go about it. Depends how you structure it. Just be aware of it. So, as I was kind of saying with the round of comebacks, we can kind of layer that hot tag and make it feel different. Now, if you watch the falsies versus near falls video, that still applies to tag team wrestling, as does the formula tease the move, active break, high spot, payoff, right? Tap. I'm going to call it tap from now on. Tease, active break, high spot, payoff. I could include the B, but then it's hard to pronounce. Tab. You can't do the B and the P. So I'm just going to go tap, right? But that still applies, and you also, within those active breaks and within those high spots, you have even more room for progression because now progression is three-dimensional. So if we're teasing a tag false, right, we tease the move, and then the other partner, he's dead, he took something. Active break is just on the one person fighting back, or us attempting to move on the one person, or we tease the double move. One person in my team gets sent to the outside, the other two do an individual active break, then they do an individual high spot, then I come back in and we pay off the double move. Or we could do a high spot that involves the three of us. Or later in the match, considering progression, we could do a high spot that involves the four of us. That leads to us paying off the falsie that we teased. And then this is when we get into the mean of things, the meat of things. But talking about falsies versus near falls, remember this. Again, if I could resume the falsies versus near fall video that I made, which is the first one, because it's probably the one I get the most questions on, right? Or the one that I have as a comment more often, where people could really elevate their matches by not treating every pin as a falsie and understanding the differences between a falsie and a near fall. A falsie is a moment where the audience will believe the match might end, and a near fall is just a 2 count in the back end. But in order to make something a falsie, you need to give the audience a reason to believe that it could end the match. Usually the two main factors for that are there's a story behind it. Either we built up to it in a different way, or we tease the move and then the pacing is right? But the one sentence that kind of encapsulates that is, when I'm building a falsie, I need to think, if the match ended at this falsie, would my finish be lame? Would the match suck because it ended on a down note? And if the answer is yes, then it's probably not a good falsie. It's probably a near fall and not a falsie. In order for it to be a falsie and make the audience believe that it's going to end the match, and it has to at least look like it's going to end the match, right? And when it comes to tag team wrestling, there's a lot that we need to think about. Replicate the conditions for a finish. If it's ends here, does my match... So positioning is the biggest part of that. I'm going to give you a 5 seconds to think of your answer, but tell me the last time you see this. When did a tag team match, or a good tag team match that you saw, end with the pin or submission or whatever happening on the inside, and one of the partners either just standing on the apron looking in? And the answer is probably never. Because if there's a pin happening and there's someone on the apron, then the audience is looking at the person going, why aren't they doing anything? Right? Especially, again, Western independent wrestling. They get away with this a lot on TV. Because you can kind of hide laying down on the apron and the camera just cuts into the guys in the center. But if you are laying on the apron, laying down during something that's meant to be a falsie, then it will most likely no longer be a falsie because you will have 1/4 of the audience in a 16 by 16 ring looking at you and not seeing the pin, so their focus will not be on the pin. That is the reason that a lot of falsies fail. Tag team matches usually end. The finish of a tag match you can usually see coming on an independent show in the US, for example, because it'll happen once everyone else is outside and there's only the pin and you can't see anyone else. That's how they usually end, because that's how it makes sense to end them. And if you want to do a falsie, but you have people that aren't in position, then it's not going to look like the finish. So you have to be very careful of that. But again, I wrote it here with a lot of asterisks because it's important. Please, just speedball rules for tag team wrestling. No laying down on the apron. Just don't do it. Just roll to the outside. You're either involved in the spot or you're not, and middle ground usually doesn't work. Again, especially off TV when you can't tell production, hey, don't have the camera on this guy. And it's a small ring with a small venue, right? And as well, in the back end, this is a very interesting back end note. Something that I learned in Japan that I think works fantastically in America, or at least it has for me when I brought it back and did it here. Less frequent tags, perhaps even none. Do you have a hard time keeping track of who's legal in the back end of your 6-man tag when you're trying to do a lot of falsies? Well, the answer is the same 2 people that stayed legal. Again, we had a round of comebacks or whatever. Action, final tag. And then these guys just stay legal. And then everyone else, because they're selling, they're no longer on the apron. Their role is basically to come in and out, right? They're in defense. And then the legals are on offense. You do not need to have late tags. You do not need to have a tag a minute. There should be less. Again, as the spots get longer, if you want to be able to continue your momentum, of course you can use tags within the progression. You can use tags at any point, but understand that's difficult. The easiest path to keeping track of the legal person in the back end of a complex tag match is no tag. Just have one final tag, double, right? Everything else just becomes more complicated. Again, you can, you should, but the easiest way to just keep track and have it be straightforward and be able to focus on the action in the ring and building those near falls and all that, no tags. That's okay. I've had tag matches that were great and had no tags for the last 10 minutes. I have had plenty of those and they're good. It's fine. Don't feel like you're obligated to do a tag because it's a tag match. The fact that you're able to go in and out and counts are being broken and moves are being prevented by the other illegal person running in and saving their partner, that's enough to make it different from a singles match, right? And then the interesting thing, again, when I talked about when you're building the falsies, a big part of what makes a tag match more interesting is the potential for longer spots, more progression. You can use the illegal man. We'll go back to my tap, right? The high spot that pays off to the near fall. We can stretch that. We can stretch that. Again, I tease my individual falsie that gets countered. So my partner comes in. We tease our tag team falsie. Then there's the active break. There's the progression. We pay off the tag team falsie. 1, 2, save. Then the 2 legals, man, after that hard break, kind of sell out. So the 2 illegals, they keep the in-ring action going with the spot. Ends with the dive. Then back in. Hit the single move I teased. Our spot became even longer. Because while I got to rest and we kept the audience engaged with the illegals doing a spot, right? We transitioned from the legals doing a spot to the illegal wrestlers and went back and forth like this in order to raise progression, in order to make spots even bigger, even longer than what you would get in a singles match, right? That's a perfectly cromulent way to use the gimmick of a tag team match to display why it's different, right? And And then I'm going to copy these two because I kind of talked about the one. But talked about, right, playing defense. The legals are on offense. Especially in a six-man tag, that's a very interesting dynamic, and that works fine. There's two guys who are doing the moves, and then the illegals are kind of breaking and coming in and out and assisting, but the focus is on the two people that are legal mostly. The Japanese notion of covering on the outside, which is something that I wish was brought to America, and I think it isn't really a thing. I don't think it exists because of television, because it's a hard thing to get on camera. But if you watch Japanese six-man tags, everyone is fighting on the outside. So this is how it usually plays out, the Japanese notion of covering, right? Legal, 1, 2, illegals break the count. Then the other illegals from the other team slide back in. They throw the guys who broke the count outside, and they're holding them on the outside as they're trying to get in the ring. And then everyone is active this way, and we're all working together. We're holding the other guys. We're trying to reach in to prevent whoever is on their team on the inside of the ring for getting hit. Like my favorite is in a tag team match, for example. If I'm illegal and my partner hits a move, 1, 2, his partner saves, the opponent's partner saves, I throw him outside. I have him in a waistlock trying to prevent him from getting back in the ring. My partner does a roll-up, 1, 2, kick out. He gets rolled up. We switch position on the outside. Now I'm reaching, 1, 2, kick out. Another roll-up happens. The other person, I switch back, preventing my partner from breaking, 1, 2, kick out. Then they hit a move. Then my guy breaks free. He slides in. And then we go into tag stuff from there. I kind of need videos examples to show this, but if you watch New Japan Tag Team Wrestling, you will see this a lot. The guys kind of holding each other and grappling on the outside, the people who are illegal, which helps keep the focus. Again, if we're all looking at the action inside the ring, even while we're grappling and holding each other on the inside, we're not brawling, because if we were brawling, we would be distracting the audience from the action. No, instead we're grappling lightly, focusing our eyes and our attention on the action that's happening inside the ring. So we're all working together. And eventually, probably, we'll break free and break it. Or the finish will happen. That happens a lot, right? What happens after kickouts can be part of your progression. As I mentioned, the in and out, right? The illegals save, illegals do a high spot. Then we can just go back to legals and again and keep spots going. I kind of brought this up before, but then I had it in my notes anyways. Oh boy. Okay. Now, this is examples of tag team structure, potential tag team structures. I have like 2, but again, there's an infinity of options, and the rules still stay the same. But okay, so heels are A and B, right? That's their names. The A and B, the letters are the heels, and the numbers are the baby faces. Right? Okay, so this is my go-to tag team structure. If you ask me in a vacuum, how do you structure your tag team matches? It's about 15 minutes, which is the average length for a tag match. I would happily trim it or whatever, but 15 minutes. This is kind of shows all the devices that I regularly go to, but there's a lot of advantages to this structure. Okay, so break it down. It looks like, I hope you're good at algebra because this helps, right? Beginning, pair 1. Shine, second pair, right? So there's a beginning. We understand dynamics. We tag out. Second pair does a shine. Yeah. Then tag back out for the cutoff, right? This is, again, keeping the momentum going. Then we have our heat on one person. Then turnaround. Then this is back to the comeback video, turnaround and fire, which make up the entirety of the comeback. But the turnaround usually, in my singles matches, again, in singles matches, I believe you should build your comeback as if you were in a tag match with yourself. So turnaround is what creates the separation. Fire is what you do when you come in, right? So first babyface does the turnaround. He's been taking heat, finally makes it, bumps the heel, tags his partner. Babyface 2 comes in. Babyface does the second part. Babyface goes for his finish or something. Eats the turnaround of face of The other heel. Yeah, from the heel. The heel tags out. Then the second face does his comeback, right? So everyone gets a piece in this. And then the fire bleeds to a double down. So this is what we have. We have sort of a round of comebacks, right? Everyone gets a little bit of something. So there's some exchange, there's balance, and then we have our down. Then we tag, we double tag, and that leads to the first pair, right? This is B and 2, which is two of our the second pair of our heels and faces. We're back on. Then they build up to a single false. And again, this is going back to tap, right? So they come in, tease a move, no. We have some kind of active break, rebuild, ice spot that leads to one person hitting the move. And then this is where our progression hits even more, right? We had the singular falsy. Now we can progress in the third dimension as well by adding people, right? We have A1, yeah, A and 1. Again, in this structure, they just stay legal till the end. So they do the first falsy here, and then B comes in. So the second heel comes in, breaks the count off of this falsy, and then we repeat, right? We get rid of 2. So usually, saves the falsy, attacks the guy on the apron. We tease the move on the babyface. The babyface fights back, active break. Boom, 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 combo. We pay off the move that we teased. 2 comes in. Other guy saves. And then we can kind of repeat the same spot, right? We tease our falsy, and then that'll lead to the finish. We can either stop, restart, or just have it bleed to the finish. It doesn't matter. So yeah, I wrote plus. This is everyone involved, right? So the active break and the high spot kind of involve everyone. Maybe it has dives on the back of it. Maybe it has more than one near fall that gets broken and we bleed the action in and out. But the goal here is that we have, our single false, then our heel false, and then the finish. You can see here, within the progression, all 4 people are involved. Here it's only 3. Here it's only 2. So there's progression in that way. I know me writing it down like this probably doesn't make that much sense. Let me put the version with times, and maybe that might be more helpful. And again, this is a structure that I have used many, many times. Like literally this structure, this exact rhythm and progression, right? So it's 16 minutes. So the beginning between A and 1 is 30 seconds, and the shine is like a minute, so it takes us to a minute and a half. The cutoff is another 30 seconds. Then we have a minute and a half of heat. We have a 30-second turnaround, a minute of fire, another 30-second turnaround, a minute of fire, and then we rebuild to our double down for another minute. Boom. Then our second falsies, double tag, slow falsy, minute and a half, right? Tease the move, active break, high spot, hit the move, broken up by the other heel, tease the move, small active break, high spot, hit the move, broken by our baby face. Here's the return. Right, and so on. And our finish, again, once the big babyface tag false is broken, we start rebuilding, we involve everyone, we break up the progression. This is the biggest spot of the match, and we go, right? When I talked about the hot tag fallacy, it kind of implied that this long plus A1 and B2, long and involves everyone, was around here. Where within this structure, right, everyone gets a comeback, so there is balance. By balance, I mean, it kind of sucks if the tag team dynamic, which happens a lot in matches that use the hot tag fallacy structure, where one guy takes the heat and the other guy does a wrestling match, which tends to be very, very underwhelming. I don't know how hard this is to read, but I'm willing to go back into it, go deeper, right? This is 16 minutes, though, so it's quite long. But honestly, you could do it without a lot of this. You could go, for example, straight to here. Double down, single falsy, and then it would probably be, 12 minutes. Then we have a 3-minute finish that kind of involves everyone and builds up properly. Where we have our double down, double touch. That's one way to go about it. Let me present you guys with another structure for even shorter, different, but still very replicable, very easy structure that I've certainly used before. This is 12 minutes. So now we have our beginning, we have our shine, then we have our tag shine, right? Still, the shine is shorter because it gets combined with the tag shine. So then it makes sense. If I did a minute and a half tag shine, then it would be very hard when I get to, for example, to tag false to keep the progression going. But because this shine is mostly an individual shine, then maybe a little tag team stuff off the back. This is tackle, drop down, leapfrog, hip toss, drop kick, tag the other babyface in, shoot, fucking double back elbow, double standing moonsault, 1, 2, kick out, right? And then because we had a tag shine, we can have a tag cutoff, right? It's a minute long. It's not super long, but, that's double standing moonsault, 1, 2, kick out. Shoot, reverse, knee to the back, knock the guy off the apron, other guy grabs you in a waist lock, other guy comes in, and so on, right? Now, see, here we have a hot tag, which is A1, right? Legal or A1, so B2. We have our heat on 2. B2 do the turnaround, down, crawl, double touch. So we don't have a round of comebacks, which is unfortunate. Because if everyone in our match has a good comeback that they normally do, they don't get to do it in this match. We just have a hot tag. But it's okay because we're saving on time. And our hot tag, again, still pales in comparison to what comes after it. Right? Hot tag bleeds to a double down, which we use, again, involving everyone, turns into a shotgun waterfall that leads to the down. Trying to get more stuff in from everyone, keep that balance, but also keep the match shorter. Tag false, finish. I'm sure this feels intimidating to look at. But what I recommend is that you think, if you're in a tag team, or if you know a tag team, or have 3 other wrestlers, imagine what your role would be within this. And again, as theoretical and algebraic as this may seem, this is stuff that I would use, have used. I had a 4-on-4 tag match in AEW on Dynamite recently, and this was basically the structure, except it had 2 tag falsies. But this was basically the structure. Like, before I started putting moves in, this is the structure that I kind of imagined. However, as always, there is a literal infinity of structural options. There's a bunch of ways to manipulate this, change it, as long as you follow, certain rules that I think are important, such as progression. I think you will find hundreds of ways to build tag team matches that make sense. However, in order to be able to stay on top of all of this, and this is complex, this involves a lot more people and a lot more timing and a lot more stuff than a singles match, right? We have 4 people or 6 people or 8 people rather than 2. So communication and having a game plan is key. So communication in very simple terms. This is something that I see. I hate when I see people that are on the same tag team calling stuff to each other like you would in a tag match, right? Hey, this spot. No, just yell instructions. He's your tag partner. You can yell, hey, powerbomb him. That's always fine. You can communicate while you're wrestling. You can say help, 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 and then your guy come in and help you. But also, when it comes to like time to plan, right? Especially if you're like, this is an extreme example, relatively, it's still very common, it makes sense, but if you're a tag team who travels together, you drive together to the show, or you were in the same car on the way to the show for a couple hours, you can make a game plan. You can decide, this is what we want, like, we're going to do this, and this move as our tag offense, and we're going to use this story, and we're going to build up to this tag move, so that when you start planning the match, you're a united front. You're already on the same page. Both of you kind of already have a vision. Now, of course, communication, again, negotiation, which could be the whole concept of another video. You're not going to bombard the whole team and just steamroll them with your ideas. You're going to see what they want to do and then see if it fits within your game plan and kind of arrange it. But in terms of like you as a tag team, you should work as a unit and have an idea for what you want to do. Even if it's a stranger, even if you're not in a tag team, you can still talk to your partner before you talk to your opponents, kind of giving an idea for what you want to do in this match. For example, one of the greatest and most influential tag teams of all time, the Motor City Machine Guns, they have names for absolutely everything. All their tag team combos have specific names. All their tag team moves and finishers and devices have specific names. Even their matches have names. Like if they'll go, oh, we'll do the Windsor match, and they say that together, they know that implies, okay, so it's this cutoff to a neck heat to Alex Shelley getting his leg hurt, teasing this move, and then they use this as a falsie or as the finish. And again, that plays a lot to replicability, but they've been teaming for so long, they've wrestled, that they're so much on the same page, they just have names for everything, and that allows them to, when they're planning a match or wrestling, you know what I mean? One guy will be in the ring, and he'll just tag, and they haven't even discussed it. They go electric 6, and then they do a 15-move combo, which is a huge advantage to tag team wrestling that I think people don't utilize enough. But aside from people being on the same page, right, this is, I think, one of the most important things to remember. The contrast is what makes things interesting. So let your individuality shine. Do not let the fact that you are in a tag team or wrestling in a tag team change you as a wrestler. And that is kind of the key to being a successful tag team, is that you still need to be good as individual wrestlers. Again, I don't remember in which video I talked about it, but I'm sure I do. I think you should have the same moveset. Whether you're a heel or a face, you should kind of protect what you do so that you get very good at doing it. This applies very much to tag team wrestling, where, again, this is why I like the idea of a round of comebacks so much. Because if you have a comeback that is good and makes you unique, and you hit all the metrics that I noted in the comeback video, then it would be a shame for not everyone in the match to do their comebacks and not do what makes them interesting as single wrestlers because it's a tag match, right? And this, again, highlights the fact that not everything can be tag team wrestling, because if everything is tag team wrestling, then it's hard to have that much material and kind of takes away from what makes you you. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the, again, talking about me and Jake Something as a tag team, how it worked is the first time we had a tag match, and it was just, this part just being our best stuff, and then combining our stuff here. Jake does a sick power bomb. I do a shooter knees. So our finish, power bomb, shooter knees. Very easy, makes sense. But this also applies to the progression. I would happily, and we've done it in our last DPW match. I hit shooter knees as a normal individual false, and then later we hit the tag combo. It all builds up and makes sense with the story as long as there's the progression, because, again, more like here, if single false is one person shooter knees, then tag false can be powerbomb shooter knees, and that makes sense. And I want single false here, my last move that I'm going to do individually, to be my best individual move, especially Western independent wrestling, where every match should be treated as if happening in a vacuum. I wouldn't hit shooter knees here on TV because it's my big protected finish. But in Western independent wrestling, you need to do your best stuff, right? And this is the note that I will leave y'all out on. Don't miss out on doing your best stuff because you're in a tag team. The best tag team matches are when 4 wrestlers do all of their coolest things in 15 minutes, meaning that you get twice as much awesome wrestling action as when 2 guys do all of their best stuff in 12 minutes. That's kind of the key to tag team wrestling, is don't let the fact that it's a tag team handicap you, prevent you from doing your cool stuff. Instead, use it as an advantage to make your match twice as fun to watch. All right, again, I'm missing so much theory, so much that I wanted to talk about. I didn't even approach 6-man tag team structure or 8-man, though the principles are still the same. The principles noted within these structures and the order and the progression is how I go about matches that have even more people in them. But I am aware this is not complete. So please send me your questions, thoughts, notes. I'm sure there's a lot that I said in this video that I didn't think about how to say it and doesn't make sense to you. And this is what I need to hear the most. I need you guys to tell me this didn't make sense. Or someone said specifically, don't do the thing that you said. This is what I want to hear about. These are the comments that I need in order for this conversation about tag team wrestling to keep going and for us to all become better tag team wrestlers, professional wrestlers, because of it. Because again, the reason I'm doing these videos is, well, two reasons. First one is so that I have to write less when people ask me to watch matches, but also because reinforcing those ideas and having to work them over in my head makes me a better professional wrestler. All right. Thank y'all so much for watching.